The wind howled to the bone-ribbed towers of Droker, a city carved from ash-black stone and old war. Fires flickered in iron braziers along the procession path, casting dancing shadows across armored faces. In the heart of the citadel, warriors stood in disciplined silence, their green skin glistening with oil and blood, their crimson eyes sharp and hungry. Tonight was the ritual of claiming. They said General Reeker had conquered more lands than any warlord since the first scorching. They said he had never once spared an enemy. But even legends grow tired, and as he stood at the altar chains, his hand clenched around the cold iron ring, he felt none of the pride his people screamed for. She stood across from him, shackled and silent, her back unbowed. Her skin shimmered a lighter green than his, flecked with golden undertones. Not of their clan. Not of any clan he recognized. Her hair fell in waves of molten silver, tangled from battle, but her eyes, fierce, unrelenting, met his with contempt, not fear. "Name her," barked the High Commander, his voice booming through the stone chamber. "Take her as yours. Break her, or the code breaks you." The crowd cheered, stomping weapons against the floor, chanting Reeker's name. But his gaze didn't leave hers. Not when she snarled. Not when she looked at the chains with more pity than dread. Her name had already been given, by some fearful scribe, carved into the stone record. But to speak it aloud would seal the pact. It would mark her as his property. "She fought like fire," said Reeker slowly, turning the iron ring in his hand. "Tore through 5 of our guard before capture. That is no slave. That is no possession." The room stilled. Even the braziers seemed to shrink under his words. The High Commander's mouth twisted, ready to strike with law. "She will kneel," he growled. "No," Reeker said, and he dropped the ring to the stone floor. It clanged once, then silence. He stepped forward and unlocked her shackles himself. Her wrists fell free. A moment passed, long enough for her to reach for a blade or his throat. But she didn't move. Her eyes widened only slightly, confusion softening her expression into something unreadable. "You may walk beside me," he said, voice quiet but resolute. "Or go where you will. No chains." Gasps rippled through the court. The High Commander's fists clenched, and guards shifted, uncertain whether to intervene. But none dared move. Reeker, after all, was still their undefeated general. She didn't speak. Not yet. Her gaze flicked toward the open doors at the end of the hall, the firelight beyond them, and then back to him. Suspicion lingered in her stance, but so did something else, a wary kind of hope. "My name is Lyra," she said, voice dry from disuse but clear. "I will not kneel, but I will walk." Together, they stepped out of the ritual chamber, past a sea of silent warriors. No cheers now, only cold stares, confusion, and the rustle of shifting loyalties. They gave him one night before the questions began, before the judgment fell. Inside his quarters, dimly lit and fortified, Reeker poured water into a basin and pushed it toward her. She accepted it without thanks, but with a silent nod, washing the blood and dirt from her arms. "You'll be executed," she said at last. "For that?" "Perhaps," he replied. She eyed him. "Why?" He sat across from her, not in armor now, but in simple cloth, a gesture, perhaps, or simply exhaustion. His face, marked by old scars, carried no expression of guilt or pity. "I've lived a life of conquest," he said, "taken more than I remember. I've been told that power is survival, that to own is to endure. But I looked at you and saw a mirror. I saw someone who would not break. And I thought maybe I followed the wrong truth." Lyra stared at him. "You could have taken me. You were strong enough. I'm tired of taking." She didn't answer, but her shoulders eased slightly. That night, she slept on the far side of the room, back against the wall, one eye always open. Reeker slept in silence, facing the door. By dawn, the city buzzed with whispers. Betrayal, weakness, treason. The High Council summoned him, demanded explanation. He gave none, said only that his war was over, and he would serve no code that chained the spirit. They stripped him of title, of command, but not of fear. Even without rank, no one dared strike him. Not yet. Weeks passed. In that time, Lyra did not leave. She trained in silence in the courtyard, rebuilt her strength. Rieker never asked her to stay, but he always left the door open. She watched how he moved now, not like a fallen general, but like a man discovering breath for the first time. He helped rebuild shattered homes in the outer district, taught orphans how to hold a blade, gave water instead of orders. One night, as the fire cracked in the hearth, she sat beside him. "They'll come for you," she said. "Not the council. The soldiers. The ones who still believe in the old code." "I know." "Then why not run?" He met her eyes. "Because if I run, nothing changes. If I stay, maybe someone sees." She studied him in the firelight. "What do you see when you look at me now?" "Not property," he said. "Not a prize. A storm. A voice louder than any sword. Someone I could build something with, not from." Silence stretched between them, and then, quietly, she reached for his hand. They came on the 30th night. 3 warriors in black leather and old bone, eyes glowing with blood-right fury. They did not knock. Lyra met them at the door. She moved like shadow, precise, deadly, and when 2 fell, Rieker caught the 3rd. "No killing, only warning. Go back," Rieker told the survivor, holding his broken arm. "Tell them this is not weakness. Tell them this is choice." After the blood was cleaned and the door sealed again, Lyra stood facing him, breath ragged. "They won't stop," she said. "No," he agreed, "but neither will we." And for the first time, she smiled, small, sharp, real. She walked to him and pressed her forehead to his. "You were supposed to break me," she whispered. "Instead, you freed me. And you," he said, "have done the same." The fire burned low as they stood in silence, no longer captive and captor, but something new, something no chain could bind. And outside, the city listened, watched, wondered. The wind in the outer reaches of Droker carried fewer screams now, replaced by the steady rhythm of rebuilding. Stone by stone, the ruin left by conquest was repurposed, not for glory, but for survival. Rieker and Lyra lived at the edge of the city's shadow, in a hollowed-out barack surrounded by half-broken walls and reluctant silence. They did not speak of love. Not yet. It was too fragile a word, too easily crushed by the world around them. But it hung in the quiet moments. The way she handed him water before he asked, the way he watched her train, as if memorizing every motion. They had no vows, no promise. Only a truce that neither dared break. Lyra still trained at dawn, blades flashing in the dusted light. Rieker rarely joined her, choosing instead to watch from a distance. He knew better than to intrude on her ritual. It was where she shed her anger, where she buried ghosts. Some mornings she bled, tiny cuts from overreaching, but she never paused. Pain was proof of progress. He spent his days in the lower quarter, helping raise walls and shift rubble. Few spoke to him now. Fewer still met his eyes. Some looked at him with disgust, others with fear. But there were a few, very few, who began to see the cracks in their teachings. A baker's son who brought him bread without a word. A widow who offered shade on blistering days. Quiet signs of shifting tides. Lyra watched all this with cautious eyes. She'd seen masks before, worn plenty herself. But Rieker's stillness wasn't performance. It was the absence of performance, and that unnerved her more. One night, as the heat of the fire crackled between them, she broke the silence. "You never asked where I come from." He met her gaze across the hearth. "I figured you'd tell me if you wanted it known." She studied his face. Creases formed from years of command, not cruelty. "I was born in the forest realms beyond the black ridges. My people raised their young to wield a blade as soon as they could stand. We believed freedom was worth any price, even our own blood. That's why your kind call us wild." "I don't," he said softly. She nodded, not in agreement, but acknowledgement. "When I was taken, I swore I'd die before being chained. Then you unchained me. That doesn't mean I trust you." "I don't expect you to," he said. That truth, spoken plainly, earned a flicker of something close to warmth from her. Trust, she thought, might come not from gestures, but from the absence of pressure. The first test came not with sword or flame, but with a child. He found her in the rubble, barely 5 winters old, green-skinned and silent, her eyes wide and blank. She clutched the cracked dagger with both hands. He knelt and spoke softly, but she didn't flinch. When he offered his hand, she looked past it. Only when Lyra stepped into view did the girl move. She let the weapon fall and ran to her, burying her face in Lyra's armor. Later that night, Lyra bathed the girl and wrapped her in a spare cloak. "She doesn't speak," she told him. "She might in time," he replied. "I'm not a mother." "Neither am I," he said dryly. She smirked despite herself. They named the girl Kale, after a star Lyra remembered from her homeland. Bright, stubborn, always visible even in storm. Kale clung to Lyra's side for days, saying nothing, her eyes tracking every shadow. Lyra taught her how to hold a blade properly, how to move without making sound, not because she believed the girl needed it, but because she needed to give her something, anything, besides silence. Watching them, Riker felt something shift, not a revelation, but a settling, a peace that came not from victory, but from usefulness. This was a life not dictated by command or war cries. It was made of mundane things, cutting wood, tending wounds, washing small clothes by hand. He found himself laughing more, though never loudly. Lyra scolded him for burning the stew. He argued she'd given him a cursed pot. Even Kale began to smile, small and rare, like a secret given as a gift. But pieces never left to grow untouched. It came in whispers first. Word that a faction of the old guard had splintered off, calling themselves the True Flame, led by Commander Velk, a zealot who once served under Riker. He preached that mercy was rot, that strength demanded sacrifice, and that Riker had betrayed them all. One evening, Lyra stood sharpening her blade when she spoke, without turning. "They'll come for her, not just us." "Kale." "I know," Riker said. "That's why we teach her to run, not just fight. She's already seen too much." "So have we," he said. Lyra looked at him then, eyes sharp. "Would you kill Velk if it came to it?" "I would kill anyone who tried to take her." It wasn't a boast. It was a promise. The following week, a scout returned half dead, carrying a warning. Velk's group was marching on the outer districts, reclaiming defectors, burning homes that gave shelter to traitors. The scout died before dawn. Riker gathered what few allies he had left, old veterans, young rebels, those who had tasted blood and found it bitter. Lyra took Kale and fled to the northern woodline with a map, a blade, and orders to run if anything went wrong. But Kale didn't want to run. She clutched Lyra's hand and asked her first word since the day they met. "Will he come back?" Lyra paused. "He will." The skirmish was brief but brutal. Riker led from the front, not because he had to, but because he refused to let others fall for his choices. Velk confronted him alone, their blades clashing in the ruins of an old training yard. "You've gone soft," Velk snarled. "No," Riker said. "I've gone sane." When the dust settled, Velk lay at his feet, bloodied and broken. Riker didn't kill him. He walked away. He returned 3 days later, ragged but alive. When Kale saw him, she ran into his arms and sobbed for the first time. Lyra said nothing. But that night, as the fire burned low, she rested her head against his shoulder. Not a word passed between them. Outside, the stars blinked awake. Quiet, distant witnesses to a different kind of battle. One not of swords or scars, but of choosing love over law. And the world, still brutal, still watching, began to tremble with the first hints of change. Kale grew fast, in the way children shaped by grief often do. Her steps grew longer, surer. Her silence gave way to questions sharp, pointed ones that often caught Riker off guard. She trained beside Lyra now, matching her movements with uncanny precision. But there were moments, fleeting and rare, when she still reached for Lyra's hand in the night, or curled against Riker when storms rolled across the mountains. 3 winters had passed since Velk's fall, his remnants scattered, though not defeated entirely. Pockets of resistance remained, clinging to the old ways like brittle roots in scorched earth. But the outer districts had begun to heal. The air no longer tasted of ash. Crops were replanted. Songs returned to taverns, and laughter once again dared to echo in the streets. Riker had become something strange in the eyes of the people, a symbol not of conquest, but of contradiction. The warlord who raised a child, who loved a wildling, who spoke of unity and meant it. Some revered him. Others feared that reverence was weakness in disguise. He wore none of it well. He kept to labor, to steel and stone, letting his actions speak where his name carried too much weight. Lyra called him foolish for it, but there was affection in her rebuke. Their relationship had not changed in its essence. It was still sharp-edged, born of mutual challenge. But now there were moments of softness, allowed only in private. Her hand in his hair, his breast steady against her back as they slept. They still hadn't spoken a word. Love. It hovered between them, unnecessary yet present like gravity. To say it felt redundant. To not say it preserved something more sacred. But not all eyes viewed their bond with quiet respect. From the capital came summons. The new High Council, desperate to project a unified front, requested Riker's presence. They spoke of alliance, of recognition, of legitimizing what he'd built. A seat at the table, they called it. He knew better. It was a leash, however gilded. "I should go," he told Lyra as they stood at the threshold of their home. "You don't owe them anything. I owe our people protection. If we're to survive long term, we need more than walls. We need recognition. And what if it's a trap?" Her voice held no fear, only calculation. "Then I walk out the way I walked in, with blade in hand and fire behind me." She didn't smile. She pressed a small amulet into his palm instead. "Take this. Kale made it. Says it's for luck." He looked at the crude carving, a wolf, its teeth bared. "That girl's idea of luck worries me." Lyra's expression softened. "She worries when you're gone." He nodded. "So do you?" She didn't deny it. The capital was a place of gleaming spires and hollow words. Riker met with men and women whose hands had never known blood, but dripped with it all the same. They praised him with two wide smiles, offered him titles carved from nothing. He refused each politely, reminding them he hadn't come for honors. They spoke of peace. He spoke of terms. A truce was signed. Resources promised. District borders redrawn. It all felt too easy, which meant it was wrong. He stayed one night in the capital. That night, assassins came. He heard the blade draw before the door opened. Years of training sang through his muscles. He dispatched the first attacker before they touched the floor. The second came at his throat. He twisted, caught the wrist, and snapped it like a twig. Blood spattered across the marble. The third hesitated just long enough for him to find the hilt of his own sword. When it was done, he stood barefoot in a pool of crimson, breathing heavily. They had not come to arrest him. They had come to erase him. By dawn, he was gone from the capital. Word reached Lyra before he did. A scout brought the message, eyes wide, hands trembling. Lyra listened, then took Kale into the forest and waited. When Riker arrived, blood still drying on his armor, Kale ran to him. But Lyra stood still. "They tried to kill you," she said. He nodded. "They'll try again." "Then we don't wait. We make the first move." That night, they spoke of war again, but not the same kind. Not with armies and banners, but with symbols, with truths that shattered lies. They knew the people wouldn't rise for swords anymore, but they might rise for something stronger, the idea that the old way was no longer the only way. They began to travel, together. Lyra spoke to clans who once called her enemy. Riker met with chieftains and farmers, leaders tired of serving thrones built on bones. Kale watched, learning the quiet power of words from Lyra, the unyielding strength of presence from Riker. In one village, an elder called Kale the Bridge Child. Born of two worlds, heir to neither, yet belonging to both. Lyra didn't reply, but she remembered the phrase. In another settlement, they met resistance. A mob, stirred by whispers that Riker was building a rebellion. Someone threw a stone. It struck Kale across the brow. She didn't cry, but Lyra drew her sword. Riker caught her wrist. "Not here," he said. "You want me to let them hurt her?" "I want them to see we're not monsters." He turned to face the mob, unarmed. "She is a child," he said. Your fear does not make her dangerous. Your hate makes you blind. Look at her. Tell me she deserves your wrath. Some did, but not all. A woman stepped forward and knelt before Kale, pressing a bandage to her wound. That was all it took. Others followed, slowly, grudgingly, but they did. Later, Lyra sat by the fire, still holding her sword. You would have let them hurt me, too, she said. No, Reeker said. I would have burned the world, but not in front of her. She has to know there's another way. She already knows. Lyra's voice cracked, but it keeps breaking. She's strong. She shouldn't have to be. There were no answers, only firelight and silence. But that silence was not empty. Kale sat between them, her head bandaged, her eyes steady. She said nothing. She didn't need to. She was watching and learning, not just how to fight, but how to build, how to endure, how to choose something better. And in that quiet, the promise of the final reckoning began to stir, slow, patient, and inevitable. Winter settled over the land like a closing hand, slow and final. Snow cloaked the shattered roads that once trembled beneath war horses, muffled the cries of the past, and painted every wound in silence. Reeker stood atop the ridge overlooking the valley, wrapped in furs Kale had sewn herself, watching the world retreat into frost. Below him, nestled between the ribs of the mountains, their home endured, not just stone and timber, but people, lives, a future. He had not returned to war, not in the way his enemies expected. He returned with truth, words sharpened not to cut, but to cleanse. And still it made him afraid. The High Council called him a usurper in absence, a traitor to bloodlines and order. But the people, those who lived beyond banners, had begun to follow. Lyra sat beside the hearth with Kale nestled against her. She hummed a song with no known words, something her mother used to sing during storms. Kale, now almost 10, no longer feared thunder, but she listened as if the melody itself could steady the sky. Will it happen soon? Kale asked without opening her eyes. Lyra paused. What will? The break. Lyra looked at the door, where Reeker's silhouette flickered in the firelight. Yes. Kale said nothing more. Children had a way of knowing truths without needing them explained. The break came not in the form of battle, but proclamation. Reeker returned to the capital, not as a soldier, but as a citizen. With him came representatives from every border he had once bled to draw. Former rebels, forgotten tribes, freed slaves. He walked the central avenue without armor, without an escort, and he stood before the council and read his statement. They called it sedition. He called it truth. The council demanded surrender. He offered negotiation. They responded with force. The guards closed in, swords drawn. The chamber erupted in chaos. But Reeker did not flinch. He raised no blade. Instead, from the crowds came a tide, those who followed, those who believed. They blocked the guards, unarmed. They held torches not to burn, but to illuminate. And behind them, Kale appeared. She walked through the line, head held high, her small frame cloaked in Lyra's old armor. The wolf amulet hung from her neck. She stopped beside Reeker and took his hand. In that moment, the room changed. The youngest counselor, barely 20, dropped her sword. Then another, then another. They could not erase the truth. Not anymore. What followed was not victory, but collapse. The old order fell, not in fire, but in fatigue. Their lies had grown too heavy to carry. Their words no longer held weight. And when Reeker turned away from the dais, he did not take the throne. He gave it to no one. Instead, he walked out the way he came, in silence with Kale at his side. Outside, Lyra waited. You left her with me, she said. I knew she'd come. You didn't know she'd be safe. No, he said, but I knew she was strong. Lyra looked down at Kale, whose fingers were red from gripping steel too tightly. You're not done. None of us are, he replied. The rebuilding began not with speeches, but with action. Reeker helped lay bricks in towns that once cursed his name. Lyra trained militia in valleys where her people were once hunted. Kale took to books, to languages and history, learning the patterns that made empires rise and fall. One evening, as twilight bled into the stone sky, Rieker found Kale sitting alone, watching the stars. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Miss what?" "Being feared." He sat beside her, his knees aching louder each year. "No, but I remember it. It kept me alive. I don't want to be feared." "Then don't wield fear. Wield clarity. Wield resolve." She was quiet a moment. "Will they come again?" "Yes," he said. "Not the same ones. But someone always does." "What do we do?" He turned to her, eyes solemn. "We show them there's another way. And we stand ready in case they don't care." Later that night, Lyra joined them, her cloak dusted with frost. She sat without a word, resting her head on Rieker's shoulder. Kale lay down between them and drifted into sleep. They had no titles, no land beyond what they could defend, no claims to crown or myth. But they had each other, and in that quiet, enduring space where love had never needed to be spoken aloud, they found what no empire ever could: peace not born from conquest, but choice. And beneath the stars, a family, chosen, scarred, whole, endured,